Steve Witkoff has just basically blown up another possible ceasefire deal.
Yeah, so here he is. He announces this on Twitter. We have decided to bring our team home from Doha for consultations after the latest response from Hamas, which clearly shows a lack of desire to reach a ceasefire in Gaza. While the mediators have made a great effort, Hamas does not appear to be coordinated or acting in good faith. We will now consider alternative options to bring the hostages home and try to create a more stable environment for the people of Gaza. It is a shame Hamas acted in this selfish way. We are resolute in seeking an end to this conflict and a permanent peace. So what he's saying is no chances of a ceasefire deal with Hamas because Hamas wants a permanent end to the genocide. They don't just want to pause, which has been the Israeli-U.S. goal for a long time now, just to get out the remaining.
And the Bernie goal.
Yeah. So he's endorsing now, essentially, Israel, when he talks about alternative options to bring the hostages home and create a more stable environment. He's saying the final solution, destroying all of Gaza, destroying what's left, pinning people into concentration camps within the concentration camp, and then expelling as many people as possible. And at Trump today, basically, was pretty much endorsing that plan.
Gaza, they pulled out of Gaza. They pulled out in terms of negotiating. It was too bad. Hamas didn't really want to make a deal. I think they want to die, and it's very, very bad. And it got to be to a point where you're gonna have to finish the job. They really they asked for things. Don't forget, we got a lot of hostages out. So now we're down to the final hostages, and they know what happens after you get the final hostages. And basically, because of that, they really didn't want to make a deal. I saw that. So they pulled out, and they're going to have to fight, and they're going to have to clean it up. You're going to have to get rid of them.
Yeah, so what happens after
you get rid of them?
Yeah, clean it up. So he's basically saying ethnic cleansing, destruction of Gaza, proceeding as planned. And yeah, Hamas doesn't know what happens after they release their only point of leverage. Israel continues the extermination campaign. So Hamas is not going to agree with that. They're not going to voluntarily allow themselves to give up and then have the genocide resume. That's just obvious. But because Israel wants to continue the genocide, it will continue, and the starvation will continue. And Trump is endorsing it. And Steve Witkoff, listen, there was people initially thought he might be more fair-minded because he brokered that ceasefire after Trump won, which Biden had been unable to do. So there was hope that maybe
unwilling.
Sorry, unwilling to do. Yeah. So there was hope. There was some hope for him. But look, remember that event a few months ago where he bragged. He got verklempt that a former Mossad chief had clapped for him. Watch this.
We must also address the threat posed by Iran. Iran must never be permitted to enrich uranium or develop any nuclear capability.
Amen.
Imagine being in that room.
This is where I ad lib. I get off the teleprompter and I say, I wish my 93-year-old Jewish mom from the Bronx was here because Yossi Cohen, the ex-head of the Mossad, just clapped for me.
So that's the guy who's going to broker peace.
And where was he there?
He's at some fundraiser for a Zionist group.
United Hatzalah.
Yeah, okay.
With Eli Beer, the guy who cooked up, no pun intended, the baked babies hoax after October 7th, one of the biggest scam organizations.
So that's the guy who's going to broker peace on behalf of Trump, who appears at fundraisers hosted by anti-Palestinian bigots and gets choked up that a former Israeli spy chief claps for him. It's just such a sick joke, and no wonder they're not making any deals with Hamas because they don't care about diplomacy. They just care about enabling genocide, and that's what they're doing.
And remember, in Gaza, they actually called June 1st the Witkoff massacre. And there have been several Witkoff massacres since. Remember what happened with Idan Alexander?
Yeah.
He was the U.S. is basically an American kid who went to fight for Israel, who was a dual citizen, I guess, was dragged out of his tank where he was terrorizing Palestinians and enforcing the siege on them by resistance fighters and taken hostage or captive. He was a prisoner of war. And Witkoff got him out by directly negotiating with Hamas, by promising a ceasefire and more aid on if they got him out, if they let him out. They let him out. Hamas lets him out in good faith, hoping that Steve Witkoff would make good and actually enforce a humanitarian pause at least, as well as the entry of aid. And instead, what Witkoff does is what the U.S. government did to the Lakota Sioux with the Black Hills Treaty. He basically just pulled the rug out from under them and Israel commenced one of the most hideous slaughters of the war immediately after Witkoff reneged on his pledge. And this led to the first massacres we saw at the new Gaza Humanitarian Foundation hubs, which were sort of like test sites at that point. This is footage from one of the Witkoff massacres, the first Witkoff massacre. This was like the first time we saw this kind of chaos. I mean, and remember, Witkoff is the guy who used with Donald Trump diplomacy as cover for Israel to be able to devise its unprovoked assault on Iran. So at this point, I think we can conclude, and we said this weeks ago, that Witkoff is Israel's lawyer.
As was Antony Blinken before him and every other person acting in a position of power in government. And he's just signed a new death warrant for how many more Palestinians?
The crime of the century is happening. So, get out and bang your pots and pans. It's up to us to generate the pressure because it's not coming from Washington. And it's also up to us to remember and memorialize these crimes. We're not going to let these figures, the genocide Democrats, get off by suddenly showing concern about the starvation that they helped to cause.